Hello and welcome to Pursuit of Perfect System. In this video we're doing the review for the Unison Research Unico 150, which is a hybrid integrated amplifier that you can see right before me here. Now, a hybrid amplifier, in case you're not aware, means inside here there is a tube based pre-amplification stage with a solid state amplification stage. Now, the hybrid amplifier has been around for maybe 40 or 50 years, but they're not common. You don't see that many of them. So I was thinking to myself, is this product going to give us all the benefits of both technologies without any of the drawbacks of either? So that was really interesting. Now, before we get stuck into this review, I need to thank two companies. I want to thank Henley Audio, who are the UK distributor for Unison Research, for loaning me this sample for review. And I also want to thank Paul from Richer Sounds Manchester, because he was the instigator for the connection between me and Henley Audio to start with. So we've all got him to thank, obviously, for this review. And funnily enough, this particular unit is going to be making its way up to Richer Sounds in Manchester to be their demo unit. So if you live in the north of the UK and you're interested in hearing this amplifier, because you need to hear this to believe it, then make sure you go and see Richer Sounds. Now, I'd suggest if you live in the southeast of the UK, then you've got Nintronics, the excellent HiFi and AV dealership in Hertfordshire, who I'm sure could get one of these in for you. Just quickly moving on to, I suppose, the visuals of this amplifier. Now, in a way, there's not really a lot to talk about from an exterior. I think it's quite a nice looking amplifier. It's quite simplistic, isn't it? There's not really many lavish touches, but that's not really the end of the world at this price point. At this price point, I would rather have more money spent on the internals of the amplifier as opposed to the externals. Now, I'm going to start with a couple of negatives because I want to get those out of the way, because they really are minor, but I think it's important to point those out. The first negative for me is this top plate of the amplifier just feels a little bit too thin. It could do with being another millimetre or two thick. I think it's because it's got really great ventilation, and unfortunately there's just a little bit of flex in the top plate and we get a little bit of ringing, which just means it's like a little bit disappointing. I could have done with being a millimetre or two thick. Not a deal breaker, but that's just one of those things. The second thing that annoys me is if I turn the amplifier on, obviously you should be able to see our LEDs flashing to indicate like the warm-up cycle for the amplifier. Now, I think what's important to pay attention to is the actual LEDs themselves. Now, they're absolutely fine. They're white. I actually really like the white LED colour. But when it's dark, and obviously this room is particularly dark, I find the use of just a plain, simple white LED just to be a little bit basic. And I think they could have done something a little bit more artistic, or something a little bit more attractive, or just use the light in a slightly different way to make the amplifier a little bit more, attractive to look at from a visual point of view. But again, this front plate is nice and thick. We've got, obviously, our two main dials on the front. Now listen to this. We get a nice clunk, don't we? A nice clunk between our selectors. Now, I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. I'm just going to power this down. The volume dial, you've got a really, it moves quite smooth. Well, it moves smoothly and it moves easily, but it's got like a nice amount of resistance to it to make it feel premium and hard wearing. So in the written review, which is on the website, which funny enough I should have mentioned right at the start, there is a very comprehensive written review, obviously, for this Unico 150 on the website. The address for the website is down below, and there'll be a link to the written article. This is certainly unique, the kind of clunkiness between the selections. Now, again, that's because they're relay based and they're separate, so each individual input gets separated from each other when you select between them, which is a really good thing. Now, while we're talking about inputs, this amplifier has a home theatre bypass mode. Now, when I first tried to use that, I got a funny buzzing sound coming from the speakers, which I thought was really strange. Now, if you go and read the manual for this, right at the very end of it, it says if you're going to use the home theatre bypass mode, switch the amplifier off first, then put it into its home theatre bypass mode, then switch it back on. Simple as that, but I think there's something that most people wouldn't necessarily even think of. For me, at this price point, I want the bulk of the money being spent inside the amplifier, and that is something that Unison Research have definitely done. Now, if we pop the lid, you can see we've got two very, very big transformers, and that is because this is a dual mono design. The amplifier has 150 watts per channel at 8 ohms and does 220 watts per channel at 4 ohms. Now, the interesting and exciting part about the amplifier is the pre-amplification stage, really, where we've got our tube section. Now there's two different types of tubes in this. One is for the input and one is for the driver. Now the input tube is a 12AX7 and the driver tube is a 6H30. I'm sure there's people watching this where those tubes really mean something to them. Now somebody asked a question through one of the videos that I created already, you know, how often do I need to change tubes and how expensive are they? Well, I googled that before I made this video, and the 12AX7 tubes come in at around £30 each, and the 6H30 tubes come in at around £8 and £15 each. So a full set is 4, so we're looking at under £100 to do a full tube replacement. Inside we have other really interesting features. As you can see, there's a lot of capacitance. You can see Mundorf capacitors. Now Mundorf capacitors are very high quality, they're expensive, but they've been used in this amplifier in certain key areas, in certain key ways, to make sure that all the key critical parts in the audio chain are as high quality that they can be within this price range. So the components within this amplifier are very good for the price of it. Speaking of the price, the amplifier costs £4,499. Before we move on to sound quality, I just want to mention this. This is the remote control that comes with the Unico 150. Now I can't help but be impressed by the wood finish and the fact that it's wood and it's kind of old school and it's retro. Let's talk about the sound quality from this amplifier, because it's been a very, very interesting experience. Over the course of the time I was reviewing the Unico 150, it was winning me over and winning me over and winning me over. Now its strengths and positives are pretty obvious straight off the bat. It's got a lovely balance of lively and smooth, energetic and mellow, sweet but still with lots of micro detail. The micro detail that keeps things interesting, stops things sounding too warm. We get fantastic bass quality and clarity. For the most part, it allows for a very lush and sweet mid-range, which put on some female vocals and they sound fantastic. And there's song demonstration videos in the channel already which demonstrates that. Flipping over to classical music. Now it's probably the best that classical music sounded in this system from a tone point of view. The kind of lovely, sweet, lush tone works fantastically with classical music. Again, there's a song demonstration video in the channel for that as well. Flipping over to some more extreme type music, I listen to some Dr. Dre and some Biggie Smalls, and I listen to some Bob Scaggs, and I listen to some dance music, and I listen to all sorts with the Unico 150 at louder and louder and louder volumes. And it's interesting, as you crank the volume up, you'll find you get a ceiling like you do with most products, which beyond that ceiling the clarity starts to diminish. But even at that ceiling point, the sound on the Unico 150 refuses to harden up. You can hear where it's hit its ceiling, but it still maintains that lively but mellow presentation. In terms of drawbacks from a sonic point of view, I would say the overall soundstage space is better with other amplifiers, and I think that's largely because it's big, warm, voluptuous sound. It doesn't allow for space. Well, not in this listening room, maybe in a bigger listening room that would maybe come through more, and possibly the very low end bass could do with a little more presence, but that really is nitpicking, because the bass that it does do is big and it's sweet and it's rounded and it's full and it's articulate, and interestingly it's about as soulful as the mid-range and the treble is. It's really interesting in that regard. And while we're talking about soul, I think that's one of the big things this amplifier's got from a sonic point of view. It elevates music, it gives music life, it gives music a soul. So just some final thoughts. I don't think this is a perfect amplifier. There's a few things here and there that are niggles, but there's only niggles. They certainly wouldn't put me off purchasing the amplifier, and they certainly shouldn't put you off getting a demonstration of this amplifier. And I think it's one of those products that's not going to light you up with fireworks when you first listen to it, but listen to it, take it out, try something else and see if you miss it, because that is exactly what happened to me, and straight away I missed it, literally straight away. So what I think Unison Research have done here is created a product that's affordable, that's well built, it's got good quality parts and components inside it, that's going to last you as a result, that's tunable to a degree, because the tubes they've used in here are very easily accessible and they're not expensive to replace. So I hope you've enjoyed this review. Don't forget, there is a full written review, which is far more detailed than this, on our website already. Go and visit that. There's also loads of other things on the website. I've got some fantastic content coming soon with shows, other reviews, and all sorts. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Make sure to leave us a thumbs up if you haven't already, and subscribe to the channel. And I'll be seeing you in the next one. Take care.